Welcome, guys. This is your family caregiver, Queen C. Pinkston, your family caregiver supporter. And this is our Wednesday podcast, guys. And we're on this a few minutes late. We got something else coming up today, but we just had to get here with this dynamic video of Dr. Macie P. Smith. Dr. Macie P. Smith is a dedicated advocate for the Black family caregivers, particularly those navigating the challenges of dementia care. With over 22 years of experience, she has coordinated care for aging and vulnerable populations, emphasizing culturally competent support. Dr. Smith is also an award winning educator and best selling author known for her books like A Dementia Caregiver, Call to Action, The Journey, and A Dementia Caregiver's Guide to Care. It says, just ask Dr. Macie. So, guys, we're going to get right into this video and let her just share this dynamic information. Like, share, and subscribe, guys. Here we go.
Unquote, uh, glamorous career as a licensed social worker, owning my independent practice. Well, it didn't quite go that way. We took a lot of detours. The first job I had in my field was with the a state agency on disabilities and aging. And no matter how much I tried to leave that industry and get another job, nobody would even call me for an interview. And so I knew my bills had to be paid. So I said, I might as well just stay here, rock it out, do what I know to do best. And that's what I did because nobody else would hire me. But then my grandma developed dementia. We didn't know what type of dementia she had, but I was well positioned by that time to provide support and care for my family, which was really my dad, who was her primary caregiver, and my sister, who lived closer to her. But it was just so divine in how it happened, because I was sitting at my desk at the agency managing the care of over 100 individuals who were aging, who were disabled, and who also, several of them were diagnosed or misdiagnosed with dementia. And so I had started my training in dementia competent practices, and then I started doing more research. And so when my grandma developed it, it still looked a little different. I still was dumbfounded. I still really didn't know exactly what to do. So I thought, until I had to really compartmentalize my roles, and I had to take on the role as the licensed social worker, later gerontologist, to be able to help my family navigate the long-term care system, which is confusing for no reason at all. But then also to provide that level of compassion and, empathetic support to my family, but most importantly to my grandma as she journeyed through the disease process. And it just snowballed from there, because I felt that I was good at it because of the reports I've been getting, and just the stories of how caregivers talked about how the basic information really did change the course of how they provided care, because not all people provide a high level response in a way that's practical and tangible to family caregivers and families who are living through the journey. And so those comments and those recommendations just gave me the fuel that I needed to really be able to expand the knowledge that I've gained and that I'm still gaining, and to be able to put it into practical circumstances.
And how old was your grandmother when she was diagnosed, and were you noticing signs earlier? I'm curious in your personal story, and I know each one is different, right?
Yeah. So she developed it later on in life. So she was in her late 80s, really early 90s. But I didn't notice anything because I wasn't there every day or even every week. I would probably go and see her once a month. So I saw more so depression than dementia. And for those who don't know the difference, they could get those two confused. And it wasn't until my sister called me and said, while I was sitting at my desk at the disabilities agency, and said, Grandma is walking to people's houses, knocking on their doors, trying to figure out how to get home. And immediately my heart dropped into the pit of my stomach. Immediately, because in the back of my mind, I knew what it could possibly have been. But in the front of my mind, I'm saying, I'm in denial. It absolutely is not, because I was just there a month ago and I didn't see anything. And so, because I knew enough about the disease process, once I got over that initial shock and the initial denial piece, I knew it was time to get to work. But she would actually develop urinary tract infections a lot, which looks just like late stage dementia, which it wasn't. And with her, it was a combination of depression and dementia, and then just societal factors and environmental factors, moving from one place to the next, and dealing with family concerns. And so, and people don't realize, when you do develop a form of dementia, if the other parts of your life are not healthy or well, it is going to cause the disease process to progress a lot faster. And in her case, it did. She was dealing with depression. She was dealing with inability to maintain her own home, be in a natural environment. She was staying with my dad. She didn't want to stay with my dad. And so it was just a lot of factors that went into play in terms of her dementia diagnosis and her cognitive impairment. And so you're right, everybody is different, but I did use a lot of the skills that I had in my professional capacity to help manage her care, manage her medications. I was more so the caregiver from the distance. So I would manage her doctor's appointments, her medications. I would provide support to my dad and my siblings whenever she started with some behavioral challenges, and just navigating what those behavioral causes could be, and putting different supports in place to try to mitigate some of the angst and the agitation that comes along with the process. But of course, Mark, they told me to come down there and do it too, so I had to go down and spend time with her. But that's almost like the thing that we call in the industry rescuing, because my dad and my sister were there all the time. When I came in, I was like a breath of fresh air, and she could talk about them all day long, and I would be agreeing with her. So that was like a release for her. And so I've learned over the years, in being able to share with my families, it's really all about the moments in which they are able to lucidly have a conversation with you or share something meaningful. It's meaningful for both the caregiver and the person living with dementia.
Are there those particular moments with your grandmother that you still think about?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she was funny. She would, it would always be a moment in time when we thought that she might have forgotten who we were. And I remember one particular time she was at assisted living, and I got up in her face, and I was like, Grandma, I know to give her a minute to respond. And I said, do you know who I am? And she did her head like she did like a cop, like, if you don't back up, you gonna get something. But she was like, sure, I know you, Lynn. And I was like, and then when she would make certain little quips, she was real quick with it. And she was talking about, my cousin was actually standing next to me, and she was talking about my cousin's mama. And as she was talking about her, she looked at my cousin and she said, well, you know what I'm talking about. That's your mama. And we were both like, it is. So you just never really know when, you think that they don't know what they're talking about. There are parts and pieces in there that are absolutely accurate, and that is a moment you can share with them.
And tell me how moving on, and how it inspired your career or influenced your career and head into gerontology.
So again, during that time, I didn't even know gerontology was a thing. So this was back in, I would say, for about 15 years ago. I didn't know that I could get a certification in gerontology. I knew what a geriatrician was, which is a medical doctor. Even though I act like a medical doctor, I am not one. I have a doctorate in higher education. But when I learned from I got my certification through the National Association of Social Workers. When I learned that was a certification area, I jumped for joy, because this was my lane. I enjoyed working with the senior population and the disabled population, giving them a voice, helping people to understand that it's more about their abilities than their disabilities. And it's not really disabilities, they're just differently abled. And so that gave me a sense of empowerment. Like it helped me more to help them than anything in the world. Of course, it's not a very lucrative paying job, but it's just a person's life that's positively impacted, that gives you a feeling that money could never provide. And so as I was, gaining additional research in the area of Alzheimer's and progressive types of dementia, learning that there are over 100 types of dementia, and then in that research learning that there was a certification that I could actually receive to be able to expound on the work that I was doing only locally. That was exciting. It was almost like it was just another lease on life for me, in my career. And it was exciting. And so when you have that motivation, you have that excitement, you have that initiation, I'm like, I want to tell everybody about this. I'm credentialed, I'm qualified, I'm licensed. And so because I have not only research data to support how practical information and strategies help to promote a quality of living for the person living with dementia, but also their caregiver, I'll need to be able to share this with as many people as possible, because many times people don't know what to ask for. They don't know what to look for. A lot of times there is a lot of jargon that's being used and professional terminology that goes over people's heads, even in the doctor's office. And I just refuse, not on my watch, for someone to actually remain in a state of crisis when they don't have to. And so I feel like my job and my role and my passion point really is to break down those complex ideas into basic, tangible, relatable items of interest.
And tell us about the situation. I know it influenced your work in the Black community, and maybe some of the disparities that exist. Any also special sort of needs, or to support the community that you see is lacking right now. I know it. We hear a lot of talk about disparities, but what are they and what can be done about them?
So we talk about the social determinants of health in general that really play an important role in our livelihood and in the way that we live. I'll tell you, I've gone into hundreds of assisted living communities, and I specifically remember someone saying to me in a course I was doing, our seminar, that more white people were at higher risk of developing Alzheimer's disease than Black people. And I said, well, the data actually does not bear that out. I said, that's actually incorrect. And I asked, why do you say that? And they said, because there are more white people in assisted living communities than Black people. And I said, you're right. I said, but let's look at, I said, whenever you see that, in order to really determine what the real disparity is, follow the money. So when you follow the funding source, you realize that that is why there are more white people in assisted livings than, say, Black Americans, because that is private pay. When we look at the disparities across the board, when we see and we start to assess food, and we see food deserts are predominantly in Black communities. When we look at the water we drink and the air we breathe, we look at, where there is pollutants in water and the air is highly saturated with just dangerous chemicals. That is in predominantly Black communities, not necessarily rural, because it could be in the city and the suburban areas as well. When we look at health deserts and hospital deserts, they're predominantly in Black communities. So you have food that you eat, the air that you breathe, the water that you drink, and the inability to access appropriate health care. These 4 factors increases one's risk to developing Alzheimer's disease and progressive types of dementia. And so with those factors and those elements alone, if you can't change where you live because of money and financial resources, but at least you can have the education. But then, Mark, now we're dealing with broadband deserts. Those are in those rural, desolate communities where we find a large amount of Black and brown people live. And so being able to diversify, number one, break down the practices, break down the elements of complex ideas, and then diversifying the way in which you disseminate the information. It can't just be on social media. Because number one, you got to vet some of that info. Well, you need to vet all that information. You got to do print. You got to do television. You got to do radio. And I am on all those platforms, but I can't be on it alone. And so I'm so thankful for what you all are doing and being patient, because you have print. You're on social media, and so you're providing information and bringing experts in to be able to break down these complex ideas in order to provide people with real world, real time information that they can use that day to change the course of their life. And just being in not just one space, but being in all spaces.
Speaking of real-time information, we've actually got a question for you. Says, hi, from Michaela. Hi, Dr. Smith. I'll be a licensed professional counselor next year, and I'm specializing in support of caregivers, specifically of loved ones with dementia, and broadly of loved ones of people with chronic or terminal illnesses. If there was a resource, a book, or something you would want a white clinician to know about how the process is different from BIPOC caretakers, what would it be?
So, well, of course, I'm going to tell you to grab my handy dandy compact guide, A Dementia Caregiver Call to Action, The Journey. But in addition to that, you want to go to the NIA, the National Institutes on Aging. I love their platform. They break it down into different populations and pockets of communities, not only the Black community, the Hispanic community, the Asian community, and they talk about the experiences that people have. Also, if you just connect with me on social media, I'm involved with a couple of different organizations that have that we address different caregiving experiences by the population. And I will say the caregiving isn't different. Caregiving is care across the board. It's the experience of different cultures as it relates to or as impacted by the social determinants of health. Congratulations, Michaela, on choosing this career path and being able to be available to support caregivers. But, as you get into the industry, I think here my book is a starting point. The NIA is a starting point in connecting with me on social media. I share a lot of resources, but you can also, just Google Black caregiving. And so when you Google Black caregiving, I would encourage you to click on any support groups that's available, because that's where you can get your real-time data and real-time experience of what Black Americans as caregivers are actually experiencing.
And tell us about the African American community and the stigmas maybe surrounding the disease that may be particular to them, and also other communities too, but then also the information. Are they lacking information compared to other segments of the population?
Yeah, and I'll talk about just the comparable groups. And when there in my experience personally, but also professionally, I have a geriatric care management practice. And Michaela, that may be something that you want to open up in line with your counseling degree, because when I'm working with families who are living with, because it's a family living with Alzheimer's or dementia, sometimes I refer the couple, the husband and wife or spouses, to individual and couples counseling, because it is a challenge when they bring a loved one into the home, somebody's mom or dad, and it could interrupt the normalcy.
Guys, I need to stop just for one quick second because I'm going to have to get on another call. So I want to make sure you get this before she finishes out. She's only going to do a couple more minutes, and this video will be probably one of the shortest ones that I've done as a live. But I just want to encourage you to like and share the video. We're getting more and more people that are very, very interested in the subject. I never really knew how much people were interested in finding out what is going on with dementia in the Black community as well as others. Guys, just remember that Dr. Smith's effort highlights the importance of addressing systemic barriers and empowering caregivers with knowledge and tools tailored to their unique cultural and community needs. I had someone say to me, why do you say Black caregivers? I'm a caregiver and I'm hurting too. And as you will hear her say and heard her say, yes, yes, it's all over. But there are a lot of disparities in the Black community, and we're trying to educate and bring that forward so that we can have the knowledge that we need to deal, because we see now that Alzheimer's and dementia is very high in the Black communities. And if we get this information, we're in a better place to help ourselves. So we're not, she is not, as she ministers to, she works in the Black community for health, for caregivers, and I am not, as my podcast is geared toward family Black caregivers. But we understand that this is where the need is the need is greatly needed here. So not this claiming anyone, but that's what we're doing. So let's get back to her as I get ready to get on to this other Zoom call, guys. I just want to say thank you so much for coming in and joining today. I want to leave a question. The question is, what aspects of Dr. Say our name correctly here, Dr. Macie's work resonates most with you? If you could answer that question for me, and if you could answer, like, what unique strategies does Dr. Smith, her name is Macie P. Smith, advocate for caregivers? Did you get anything out of the video? Please leave a comment, and let's get back and let her talk.
Of the household. But when we talk about just the caregiving experience, that's going to be, lack of access, right? I was taught and I learned that old timers, which is not a thing, right? Old timers was a part of aging. Everybody's going to get a touch of it. Well, that's all wrong. Well, there's one thing that's right about it. Age is the number one risk factor, but doesn't mean that you automatically going to get it because you're aging. And you can't have a little bit of it, because you can't be a little bit pregnant, so you can't have a little bit of dementia. You either have it or you don't. Then there are treatable causes of dementia, meaning medication side effects,
right
interaction, lack of sleep, diabetes.
Want to honor your
These
time.
things are not explained to us as we're growing up. And the reason it's not explained to us is because our elders
Bless you,
don't have that
Minister. How are you?
right? And so it all boils down to lack of information. Number two, culturally, Black people are very they're very keen on taking care of their home, right? That is shifting a bit as the generation
so, Tanya, can you
age,
co-host
right? We take care of our own, number one, because of being risk averse. We're not allowing people into our home, into our business. We can handle our own. We're strong Black race. We have to be strong. We have to be resilient. We have to be dedicated. But what we don't realize is that all that resilience, all that I can do it myself, it's weighing on your body, on your emotional psyche. And what we know now is that approximately 35% of caregivers pass away before the person with the chronic illness. And so we do have to have a culture shift.
Are you able
to
co-host?
Culture shift is going to come with information, but not only the information, Mark, the provider of the information. Black people tend to take certain information from the Black person who's delivering the information. If you came into my church, Mark, talking about Black caregivers, they're not
what we're going to do,
because how do you know? Same thing with the Hispanic community. How can you tell me about my community when you're not a member of my community? And so, even though I'm in all communities,
thank you all for tapping in on today.
If I need to break it down to my Black Americans,
pastors on the
I'm
line.
gonna break it down because
Pastor
I
Peter, can you
experience it,
hear
I
me?
know it, and I
You're
research it.
muted right now.
And so,
Yes, sir. Would you do us the honor of opening us in prayer? Are you able to do that?
Back in the day,
Yes,
the
sir.
families were a
Thank
lot
you, sir.
bigger, so you had a lot of natural
Thank you, and we bless you today.
to be able to keep your loved one at home.
We
Families are a lot smaller now. I had my daughter when I was 31. They call it a geriatric pregnancy, but I was like, what?
in this meeting,
I only have one.
God, we
Don't plan
pray
on having
that
another
you
one.
would give
And
us
so families
direction
are a lot
which we will
smaller. I've
go
had
and
families
what
in my
to do.
practice.
God, I
The-
pray
the-
that you
the
would bless us
parent-
in our
not
endeavors
parent,
and
but
give us the
the,
wisdom that we need to
the
complete
lady
the
who had
assignment that
Alzheimer's
is
did not
before
have any
us.
children.
God, I pray for
She did not have any
Bishop
children. She
Singleton
had
and
one
his
sister.
staff on
And this is
today,
a
God,
couple
that
series
you
of
continue to
families.
give us
One sister who was older than
wisdom
her.
and the strength that we
And
need
so
to
I had
complete
to,
the
again, develop the
assignments
plan of
before
care with
us.
logical
And
supports
God,
and also
allow us to
biological
be
supports, if
successful
there are some.
because you
And then just
admonished
going
us
back
to
to the
pray
lack of
in
finances.
all things.
When
And
we look
God,
at
thank you.
the
We
the disparities in the economics of our country.
Amen.
And then broke it down into
Praise
the
the Lord.
communities.
Well,
Some of the
blessings
poorest
to each and
communities
every
are the
one of
black
you.
communities.
Thank you so much for
We're not
tapping
monolithic
in.
at all. All
Expect
black
the
people are
others
not
will be
poor
tapping in
by a
as
long
we go
shot.
along
Very
here.
well.
I'm not in
Look
Rochester,
at
not even
the
in New York
disparity
State
and
right
look at
now,
the data
but I
and
felt this to
where
be
there's
important
economic
enough
growth.
that I would do
There's
it
not a lot of
now.
us. And so
This is in
typically,
relation,
when it
as you
comes
know,
to
to the
paying
National
for
Day of
long-term
Prayer
care, assisted
for
living,
this year,
someone
May
to come into the
1st,
home,
2025.
Black Americans can't afford it.
Some of you already know we will not
Got another question, and
from
this
City
person
Hall.
is maybe a little off topic, but
Please,
Francesca
this
says,
year
I have to
it
admit
will
I had
be
a
at the county office
meningioma
building,
in the
which is
brainstem removed in
39
2000.
West
I
Main
also had
Street,
2
located
concussions
at the
from
corner
fall. I was told
of
I had
West
high
Main
risk for
Street
dementia.
and
I'm
Fitchett
76 and
Street,
starting to feel I
right
could
at the
get
corner. So,
sometimes.
for
Should
those
I be
who are
worried? And
not
what
from
can
our
I do
area,
to
I
fight
see
this?
Dr. Moore,
So
Christine
thank you
Moore
for
on the
sharing
line from
your
Syracuse.
story and
If you
praying
were there
for your health.
in
I will
Rochester,
say, let me preface this. I am not a medical doctor, so I advise you to get, assistance and, share your information with your doctor to get medical support and medical recommendations. But yes, concussions do increase your risk of developing a progressive type of dementia. Brain bleeds increase your risk. Any malformation or insults to the brain does increase your risk. Does not mean that you're going to get it, but with anybody, you want to pay attention to your cognitive ability. And dementia, Francesca, is much more than memory loss. Everybody forgets things. I forget I have my glasses on my face quite often, right? But I'm able to regain my thought process and say, oh, my glasses are on my face. I forgot because I'm stressed and I'm thinking about this or worrying about that, right? But if your memory loss and your forgetfulness begin to impair your life, begin to impair your day-to-day, then that is something you should be a little concerned about, and you would want to talk to your doctor about it. But if it's just typical normal age memory impairment, then it wouldn't be a big issue, but you definitely, because of your condition and what you've experienced, you want to pay attention to how often you're forgetting, what you're forgetting, and what is the outcome of that forgetfulness. If it's not impairing your life, if you're able to regain, your thoughts and be able to continue on your day, it's not a major concern. I would get a notebook and I would jot that stuff down when you remember that you forgot, right? That's not moron. But you write down the date, the time, and a synopsis of the situation, so that way you can refer back to it. I journal a lot as well with different things that I'm trying to keep up with, because sometimes you just forget that you forgot, and so you want to have documentation of what that experience is like, so that way when you share with your primary care physician, don't go to the hospital, don't share with your hospitalist, that hospitalist does not know you. Share it with your primary care physician, so that way they can follow you along your journey. Also, too, you would want to get a cognitive assessment, and this is with everybody, not just you, Francesca. There is a cognitive assessment that your primary care doctor can give you or administer at your annual physical, and your insurance would cover that. So when you're getting your annual physical exam, ask your doctor to also do the cognitive exam.
Macie, I just want to close with talking about your book.
Are you serious?
And you cover so many topics, geriatric care management, there's emotions felt after diagnosis, financial advice. What do you hope this book can do for our audience?
Oh gosh. So number one, if it's a family caregiver, if it's a practitioner, if it's anybody who is currently providing care support to someone with Alzheimer's or dementia, or you think you may be in line to provide care for someone with Alzheimer's or dementia because you have older family members or relatives or loved ones, I want this book to serve as a planning guide for you. I want this book to serve as a preparation guide for you. I want this book to serve as hope and also help. A lot of times when you don't have the information, because there's so much information all over the place and it doesn't really apply to you, you feel helpless. You feel hopeless. And when you lose hope, you lose life. And I don't want that to happen to anyone that's under the sound of my voice. And so this book is not big at all. It's very compact. You can read it in a couple of hours, but you're going to refer back to it as new experiences and situations arise.
Macie, thank you so much for joining us. It's been really wonderful to hear your story and advice that I'm sure will be invaluable to so many affected.
Wow, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me on this live today. And guys, you might hear some noise in the background here as we get ready to end this live. But I just want to say thank you so much. And please, you can see Dr. Macie P. Smith, outstanding information she has on supporting the Black community, empowering Black caregivers with dementia and Alzheimer's. And guys, we need this. We need this information. Why do I do this? I do this because of what I've been through. Remember my story. I cared for my late husband on Benjamin. Someone said, you always say your late husband, but you never say his name. I cared for my late husband, Benjamin, who was on hemodialysis for 20 years. And during those latter years there was a lot of, care being done. And also a bilateral amputee and wheelchair bound. And I also cared for my late Mother Nona Patterson Chambers, who suffered from dementia her last 2 years of life. So yes, a lot of this information I did not know, and so now that I found my way through, what I do now is I take time out of my life to dedicate it to supporting other Black family caregivers. Now, all caregivers, I'm a professional caregiver as well, so support all caregivers, but Black family caregivers, I can identify with that. That's who I am. I understand the culture. And I know that, as Dr. mentioned so much about the disparities, the education, the lack of education, and the lack of resources and other things that we have in our community, we need to come together and help each other. So this is what this is about. So guys, any questions you may have, you can contact me. You see my email address on the screen, and I will put more information about Dr. Macie P. Smith in the description box. Guys, share this video, like it. Thank you for your support. And nothing means more to me than your comments. God bless you all. And I'm going to end this live now, and we will see you in our next video. Guys, make sure you check out our walking videos. We were out walking, exercising. All of those things are to support caregivers, guys. We're going to see you.